The 2015 Sinquefield Cup was really an intriguing one because we had come off a quadrangular tournament in the first one.
Exactly.
And then we had a six-player in the second
round
run,
robin.
with Fabi winning in style.
Right.
But finally, we go back to a classic 10-player format, single game, 9-round event that we all know and love and come to be familiar with. And it's a strong field.
No question about it, Maurice. 5 of those players, 5 of the 10, were above 2,800. I mean, that's just so outrageously strong. I mean, it was really, really an amazing event. But it was also the way the event behaved. There was winners galloping out of the gate and then falling, and other players coming. And in particular, you recall that Magnus Carlsen's white was playing against Veselin Topalov in round 1, and it was a Sicilian. And Topalov came out with that G5 move, just electrified us, and won the game.
I remember a quote reading in the book that
the Sinquefield
Cup book. Anish Giri saying, "Even my wife knows the move G5." Speaking, of course, of Sopico.
And G5 had been a surprise to Magnus.
And the
He
G5
said, I was
was
trying to be
shocker to Magnus. He's trying to play solid.
You're like, what?
G5 lands on the board. And it's epic to see the world champion lose in round 1. You know, all the players come in thinking Magnus is the favorite to win the tournament.
World champion.
He's the world champion. He's going to be the one to chase.
Exactly.
As soon as he loses, you get a feeling like, okay, all bets are off in this tournament, and Magnus has been wounded.
Exactly. And to make it even worse, Veselin Topalov, one of the world's great streaky players, like this guy can go on a roll. He goes 2-0 to start the event. And then suddenly it was like, hey, Magnus regains his form. Because I think in the next 5 games, Magnus gets 3 wins.
In the next 4 games, at least out of 4, he goes 3 out of 4. So he wins the next 2, draws 1, and then wins again.
To suddenly get up into the mix for first again.
But in the meantime, quietly,
very
quietly is Levon Aronian.
Right. Levon, he likes America. He comes to St. Louis. He's feeling good. He's got the Americans, and he sits there and he goes, okay, 2 Americans, 2 wins, and he's drawing the rest of the field. So he and Magnus are going for the gold at this moment.
Right, they go +2. Levon, as you mentioned, beating So and Fabi.
Right.
With Magnus streaking, and then finally Topalov gets hit.
Right.
And then he gets hit back-to-back in 5 and 6.
And he flames out.
And once that happens, he has no more energy.
Right.
And it's clear now that the battle is between Magnus, the number 1 player in the world, and Aronian, who used to be number 2, who everybody used to say was the next pretender to the throne.
The darling,
but
prince.
Then his rating goes down after Fabi rises with the spectacular year before.
Yeah.
And Levon has a lot to prove because his chess game is not looking that great anymore.
Right. So Levon, at one time, the dominant number 2 player of the world, is suddenly below 2,800. He wasn't one of the 5 2,800s coming into the field that I mentioned.
Wasn't he 2,830 at one point?
I thought he was even 2,850. To give you an idea.
He had a big rating.
Real fall from grace. Okay. So there you go. And the other thing is, it's like the tournament's really competitive. Guys are just winning and losing, except for one guy. One guy, Anish Giri, man. He comes into the event. He wins his first round. Isn't it sweet? He draws the rest of his games. So a guy that we thought, he could really be a factor because he was always on the positive side of the cross table, really never got going after the first round.
Young as well. I think Anish was only 21 at the time.
The baby grandmaster at the time.
The baby of the group. But the critical round was round 7.
Right.
Magnus and Levon are tied.
Yep.
They're at +2.
Right.
Magnus is playing against Grishuk. Levon is
with
playing
white. Magnus has white against the Russian.
And Levon is playing Nakamura.
Right.
And this is the big round because this dictated what happened in the tournament.
Indeed. So what happens is somehow Grishuk is playing one of the fabulous games that Grishuk is capable of playing. I mean, in any single moment, any of these guys can beat one another. But Grishuk, for me, has always been one of those players that's extra dangerous. And the weird part again about Sasha's game is he's constantly in time trouble. And when your opponent's in time trouble, he's nervous. But so are you. So he's just making everybody, that much more unhappy and nervous and anxiety-ridden. And that game was a great game. I am telling you, Sasha played really, really well, put on a lot of pressure. Magnus was holding. And when he thought he was going to make a draw, then it all fell apart. He loses. Levon beats his third American customer in a row at this point. Their fortunes change. Levon is able to draw his way out of the event and win the third Sinquefield Cup all by himself.
I think it's remarkable for Levon, as he was trying to prove something, that he belonged. That
yes.
He knew that. He knew that. But he was wounded a
right.
little bit from that fall from grace.
Exactly.
From not really performing up
right.
to what he wants. And Levon's goal has been very clear from the start. He's always talked about it, that he wants to be world champion.
Clear.
That's the only thing that matters to
right.
him, is trying to become world champion.
Right.
But he's never done well in the candidates, always done badly. And he managed to win other events as well.
Right.
But this was special to be able to now win the Sinquefield Cup, the jewel now on the tournament circuit,
right.
ahead of Magnus Carlsen.
Right.
Felt like a little bit of a statement. He didn't back it up in future years, but it felt like a bit of a statement for him.
No question about it. And for us who watched his victory, his parade to the podium, it all looked so normal. Like, this is my usual routine. This is how I win tournaments. Just stand aside and watch how I play. And he really reminded us all of what a great player he really is, Levon Aronian. The other thing about the Sinquefield Cup for 2015 that's super special is it's the jacket I'm wearing. It's the Grand Chess Tour. That was the birth of the Grand Chess Tour, and the Sinquefield Cup being a classical event on our very first Grand Chess Tour. That makes it very special.
A big point, because it was the year when Altibox Norway and
exactly.
the Sinquefield Cup and the London Chess Classic were the only events
right.
for the Grand Chess Tour. When you look back now and you see the explosion that has happened, now you have all these events. Now it's gone to different continents. It's gone to Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire in Africa. It's going to go to Calcutta
and
be in India. Suddenly, that time seems so quaint. Only 3 events.
And yet it's not that many years ago. It's like, when you hear that expression, we've come a long way, baby, that's really, really, really what it feels like. That was very special. The first Grand Chess Tour event and the Sinquefield Cup, year 2, it felt like it belonged. Year 3, it was zipped into the calendar. That was it. The Sinquefield Cup is now one of the great elite tournaments of the world.